Great. Looks like we're on Facebook Live. Terrific. Hello. We're just getting set up for tonight's performance of the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket. So check back in with us at 8:30 for this free presentation. You can also watch it on Zoom if you go to the rhino.org, therhino.org. It is free and it starts at 8:30. Okay, Joe, great. So I think I'm ready. So I'm going to, oh, yeah, I'll let you do that. Thanks.
All
Good.
right.
Can you show me the second slide?
Sure.
Thanks. I think the way you've got the time for the top, the Ruhr semicolon San Francisco.
Do you want the word "and" in there?
No, so just the Ruhr semicolon San Francisco. Perfect. So I think the should the semicolon be up against like you had it before?
You think so? I don't know.
Yeah,
It was looking kind of crowded to me.
I like it. I think
Okay.
it's correct if.
Well, it is correct. It's correct.
Well, let's be correct.
Okay.
Correct is correct.
Unless it's a cataloging record.
Right, exactly.
We don't do that in library land. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I'm gonna go off video and off mute, and I'll see you at 7:30. Sound good?
7:30 sounds good.
Thank you. Hey, Joe. Hey Joe, how's it going?
Hey there.
Hey, let me just check my sound one more time. Let's see. Test, test,
Sounds good.
test, test.
I can hear you.
Great. And test, test.
Sounds good.
All right, terrific. Whoops, let me get rid of that and make sure I am everything I'm supposed to be. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let's see. Um, and then this should be on that. It is. That should be on this. Oh, I just lost you. You just got very quiet.
Really?
Oh, there you go. You're back. Okay, good. Yes, okay, good. And then this is original sound. That's good. And preferences. You hear anything?
I heard that.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Well, I think we can start recording.
Okay.
And terrific. Okay, great. So I'll check back in with you around 8:30.
8:30. See you then.
Thank you. Hey Joe,
Hey there.
how's it going?
Good.
Good. Let's just check a few things, please.
All right.
Okay. And test, test,
Sounds good.
test, test,
Sounds good.
test, test.
Sounds good.
Thank you. I just look at the that's good. And let's see.
I hear that.
Thank you. Good. Good.
I still hear that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us. We will begin shortly, and welcome to the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket to begin in just a few. Thanks, Joe. Years ago, I was in New York City. I was there doing a play at a theater festival. And every time I do a play in New York City, I get incredibly nervous because I'm always like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to make it. This is it. This is the play. This is the play. This is the play. It's going to end up on Broadway. It's going to be made into a movie. It's going to end up as an MTV, video. It is incredible. This is going to be great. And it just stresses me out completely. I can never relax and enjoy the experience of putting on the show, right? Because I'm just like, the whole time thinking like expectation. And it's really hard to relax. Yeah. Like when I'm out of rehearsal, when I'm not working on the show, it is impossible to relax. So one day I went for a walk in Brooklyn Heights and I decided I was going to go to my favorite used bookstore. Now I wasn't staying in Brooklyn Heights, that's very hoity-toity. I was staying in the neighborhood next to it, Cobble Hill, which is a little bit down market, But I was entitled to walk into Brooklyn Heights. So I walked into Brooklyn Heights to go to my favorite used bookstore. And it's not a big store, but it's packed with books. And the staff isn't all that friendly. I mean, they're always like working. They're always like boxing up Amazon orders and stuff like that. I mean, they work really hard now that with the internet and everything. So I just go in there and nobody like vibes it out. They don't treat you like you're going to steal anything. They're just like, it's cash. And I was looking for a book that would distract me, take my mind off of everything. So I drifted towards the history section. And that was just an excuse, really, to drift towards the military history section. And I found the book. Oh my God, one of my favorite battles ever, and a whole book on it. The Battle of the Ruhr Pocket. Oh my God, I was so excited. The Battle of the Ruhr Pocket. I bought the book and I raced home and I sat there and I read the whole thing right there. It was like amazing. I was just turning pages. I love this book. I love this book. Now, here's the thing. I need battles to distract me, okay? I'm a very disappointing gay man, because I've just never been distracted by like Betty Davis. I mean, I love her, but I don't get into that Betty Davis thing where I can escape by watching Betty Davis, Philip, give me the letter. Philip, give me the letter. Or MGM musicals. Gotta dance. Follow the Albert Road. Follow the Albert Road. Follow the Albert Road. Follow the Albert Road. I just, I love them. I do. And I've seen them all. But they just don't distract me. Not like a good battle. And I'm not into any of the cool battles like D-Day or the Battle of Midway. I like the really Gottendammerung battles. The battles that completely destroy Germany. They just turn it into rebar and piles of rubble with people crawling around like troglodytes, fighting each other. Those are the battles I love. Like the Battle for Berlin or the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket. Ah, there I am. This weird thing with not being a good gay man, it extends in the neighborhoods too. While we're on the subject, I've been to all the gay neighborhoods, West Hollywood, the West Village, Boys Town, even the Castro, and I just never felt like I fit in, the bars, the dance clubs, the drag shows. I always felt that they were so competitive, like it was all about competition. I'm a happily married man forever, but even before that, I never fit in these bars. I just felt like you walked into one of them and it was like fourth grade sports, where the two like stud guys became the team captains and then they got to choose their teams from this big pool of boys and they'd say, I'll take him, I'll take him, I'll take him, I'll take him, and you were always the last one, right? Yeah, it was like, that's what I feel like gay neighborhoods are like, the Castro. It's just competitive. Everybody's checking you out, seeing if you pass muster, seeing if you're like cool. And I don't know. It's always just made me feel weird. Like I was back playing organized sports of all the weird things. But I do like corners of gay neighborhoods. This is a corner of a gay neighborhood. Yeah. It's not in the middle of the bars. The bars are like a full block away, right? This is like a wonderful little corner of the Castro. I call it the West Castro. And it is nothing like the main part of the Castro with all the bars and all the music. No. Right next door is Molly Stone's. How square is that? Isn't that great? And this is an art gallery, Spark Arts. Isn't it charming? Look at this place. Look at the art. I can't believe this artist Her name is Jen Feinberg, and all of this art in here was created during COVID-19. How about that for thinking progressively, thinking positively in the middle of a pandemic? This stuff is gorgeous. Right up the street, the Most Holy Redeemer Catholic Church. I love it. A Catholic church in the middle of the Castro. It was opened in 1902, and you know, its parishioners, they were falling off. It was getting smaller and smaller. And then in 1982, Father Tony McGuire came here, and he wanted to revitalize the congregation. So he welcomed gay and lesbian parishioners. It's amazing. All he had left were older women. And he was concerned that they would reject the gay boys. But they didn't. They embraced them. The older women with gray hair embraced the gays. The grays embraced the gays. Isn't that great? Where else but in the Castro, right? And if you walk up the street, you'll see all their signage, and it says that they were an inclusive congregation. Does the Vatican even know what's going on out here? It's incredible. And everything they do, all their postings have rainbow on them. Rainbow flag, rainbow banners, rainbow strips. It's so charming. This wonderful man I know, Father Donald Godfrey, he wrote his PhD dissertation on that church. It's called The Gays and the Grays. Right? Because there's these older women who their sons aren't around anymore. And then there's all these sons that came here from like the Midwest and they don't have a mommy anymore. And they all come together at the Most Holy Redeemer Catholic Church in the Castro. That's what I love about this place. The combination of forces. A person like me can't feel left out with an art gallery, Molly Stones, and a Catholic church, and all of it gay, 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 but, you know, cool gay, low-key gay. So I was thinking about this wonderful battle that totally distracts me and takes me out of myself, and how to tell the story of that battle. And I thought, my God, I'll use Jen Feinberg's paintings. I'll use this gallery. I'll tell the battle with these works of art. And then I thought, yes, but what are the chapters going to be? What are the sequence of events going to be as I tell this story, right? How is it going to progress? And I thought of what the Most Holy Redeemer Church has, that every Catholic church has, the Stations of the Cross. Think about it. The Stations of the Cross. It's incredible. Now listen. So what are the Stations of the Cross? Okay, well, it begins with the crucifix, also central to the Catholic Church. That is the fact, the crucifixion of Christ. That's the fact. The Stations of the Cross are the how. They tell the story of his crucifixion. They show folks who go how it happened, how it progressed. So that is how I tell the story of the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket with its own stations. Stations of the Cross, Stations of the Battle. So what's the background to all this? Well, World War II. And what's the most important thing in World War II? What was going to win the war for the Americans? I'll tell you, tanks. That's right, tanks, right? Because with tanks, you can conquer stuff. You can take over countries. Now, of course, there are other things that you can use, like atomic bombs, but those weren't being used yet, not just yet. And then airplanes, but airplanes dominate the air. People don't live in the air, they live on the ground. They're battleships and submarines and aircraft carriers, but they dominate the oceans, right? People don't live at sea, they're not fish. They live on the surface of the earth. Now, what prevents a tank from rolling in and conquering another country? Well, the enemy, okay, but if you get a big enough army, bigger than the enemy's, you can win that. There's like mountains and hills and weather. Well, weather, you can fight all kinds of weather. Mountains and hills, you can go through them, through passes, you can do it. But what's going to stop a tank in its tracks? What's the ultimate barrier? A river. That blue strip is a river. That will stop a tank. It will stop any tank because rivers are wide, especially this river. This river is the Rhine River in Europe. It's a mile wide, it's deep, it's wet, it's full of water, it's like any other river. A tank can't deal with that, it'll sink, it'll rust, it'll just end up on the bottom full of fish. A tank can't deal with that. So what do tank commanders need to get across that river? Well, it's obvious. They need bridges. Now with bridges, you can get across any river. Easy, right? We all know this. There they are, the bridges. the bridges across the Rhine. So if the American generals can get the bridges, they can get across the Rhine River and get into Germany. So what was going on? In 1945, the Germans were losing the war. They conquered all of Europe, but they were being pushed out of Western Europe, pushed back and back and back. Over here is France, Holland, Belgium. They've all been liberated from the Germans. Luxembourg, the Germans have been kicked out. Over here is Germany, where the Germans still are. And dividing Germany from the rest of Western Europe is the Rhine River with bridges on it. Now, of course, the Germans don't want the Americans to get into Germany, right? So they keep blowing up bridges. There are only 3 bridges left at the beginning of March 1945. And if the Americans want to get into Germany, they're going to have to get one of those 3 bridges. Otherwise, they'll always have that river between them. Now, the Germans don't want to blow up the bridges yet because they have some men over here still on this side of the Rhine. And those men are slowly evacuating across the bridges. So they don't want to blow the bridges until they have to, until the Americans are bearing down on them. And then they'll blow them. But until then, they want to keep their forces moving across. So now we're to our first station. Our first station of the cross, the first station of the battle, the race for the bridge at Oberkassel, Station 1. Now, Oberkassel is a bridge that's just outside of Dusseldorf. And the Germans have not blown it up yet. They're keeping it open so they can get their troops across. They want to keep that bridge open to keep the troops flowing across. And the 83rd American Infantry Division, the Ragtag Circus, saw that it was still there. Now, the Ragtag Circus was called the Ragtag Circus because it was composed of vehicles from all armies. It wasn't just American vehicles. It was German vehicles that had been captured. It was an American Infantry Division that was racing across Germany in a ragtag collection of vehicles. And they saw that the Oberkassel Bridge outside of Dusseldorf had not been blown yet. The Germans hadn't blown it yet. And the 83rd Infantry Division, the Ragtag Circus, was racing towards the Oberkassel Bridge. And then they saw that the Germans still hadn't blown it. And they were getting to the approaches of the bridge. They came to the approaches of the bridge. They were on the approaches of the bridge. And then suddenly, the Germans blew the bridge. And the 83rd Infantry Division, the Ragtag Circus, was right there on the approaches. Station 2, the Adolf Hitler Bridge, just south of Dusseldorf. Now, the Adolf Hitler Bridge was just like the Oberkassel Bridge in that it was being kept intact so the Germans could hopefully evacuate their troops across it. But the 2nd Armored Division, the 2nd American Armored Division, nothing but tanks, saw that they hadn't blown it yet. So they started racing for the Adolf Hitler Bridge. My God, if they got this, the Adolf Hitler Bridge, that was the namesake of the country. It was named after the man himself. And if they got that, they'd get into Germany and they would win the war. And they got to it, and they got onto the approaches of the Adolf Hitler Bridge. And they were on the approaches to it. And then all of a sudden, the 2nd Armored Division was on the bridge. And then they were almost across the bridge. And the tanks were on the bridge, and all of a sudden the Germans blew it up. With American tanks actually on the bridge. So there was down to one bridge, the railroad bridge at Remagen. Now, this is a railroad bridge. So nobody was really counting on it as being the bridge that would help us get across the Rhine. But you could lay planks on top of it and get across it. And the Germans had not blown it yet. They were still evacuating General von Zegen's 15th Army across this bridge. There were still trucks full of men, cars, vehicles, civilians fleeing across this bridge back into Germany. And they hadn't blown it yet. And the 9th Armored Division of the 1st American Army got news that it hadn't been blown yet, and they started running with their tanks and all their ragtag collection of vehicles, running towards the Remagen Bridge. And they were almost on the bridge. The Germans were firing at them. And then they were on the approaches to the bridge. And then they were on the bridge itself. And they were almost across the bridge, the Remagen Bridge, when suddenly the Germans blew it up. But the explosives didn't work. They were cheap. They were the wrong kind of explosives. They did damage to the bridge, but they didn't destroy it. And the Americans got it. They got it. They got the Remagen Bridge. The bridge at Remagen. They got it. And they started to pour their troops across it. Hundreds of men, hundreds of tanks, tons of supply. They started pouring them across until the whole First Army was across the Rhine River on the one bridge left. The bridge at Remagen. Oh, there's an amazing movie about this, the bridge at Remagen, and the best part about it is it's written by the one guy who should write the screenplay for this movie, Richard Yates, and I'll come back to him later. They got it, the third station of the cross, the Remagen Bridge. They finally got one on the third try. Woo! So, they got it. You know, my husband Michael and I, when we first lived here, we wanted to explore the city, find out everything there was to know about San Francisco, and especially the gay stuff. So one night we headed out to the Castro to go to the gay theater. That's what we wanted to see, the gay theater in town. And we knew it was in the Castro, so we went down to 16th, and we were in the Castro, but there was no gay theater. So we were on 16th, we didn't see the theater, so we started walking down 16th, you know, to find the right address. And we kept walking and walking and walking, and finally we found it. There was the gay theater. Except it wasn't in the Castro, it was in the Mission. What was it doing in the Mission? That's weird. The Mission? Well, strange things happened because years later, the board of directors at that theater asked me to become the artistic director. I was so flattered. I thought, this is great. But there was another problem. Aside from the fact that it wasn't in the Castro, it had sort of shaky financial possibilities. It didn't seem to be doing so well financially. So I had two solutions to these problems. First of all, to the Castro problem, I thought, well, okay, I'll just call this like Castro East. This is just like Castro East. You know, it's like a little finger of the Castro that goes into that other neighborhood. I'm not going to call it that other neighborhood. I'm going to call it Castro East, like a protuberance, yes, that stretches into the Castro is there. Okay, that solves that problem. And then the financial problem, well, that was worrisome, but you know what? I was broke and out of work. I had to take the job. If I wanted to have an income, I better take it. So, I took it gratefully. We'd have to just figure out the finances. So, Station 4, the lunge. So the Americans have gotten across the Rhine River. Now the Germans managed to destroy two bridges, the Adolf Hitler Bridge and the Oberkassel Bridge, completely destroyed, but the Americans got the Remagen Bridge. And they started pouring across the Rhine. The Germans sent troops south to fight them, and while they were distracted, the American Ninth Army to the north built its own bridge across the Rhine, north of the Remagen Bridge. So now there were two American bridges across the Rhine River, two American armies across the Rhine, and the Germans were all grouped between them, right here. What is right here? The Ruhr, the industrial heart of Germany. Everything comes out of this part of Germany, everything. Steel, tanks, planes, munitions, everything the Germans needed to fight the war, to win the war, was being built here in the Ruhr, the industrial blood pumper of Germany. And the Americans had an idea. They'd use one army, the 15th Army, to hold the Rhine, and they would send the two other armies lurching, lunging behind the Germans 100 miles to link up over here and cut off the Germans in a huge encirclement and destroy them. How would they do this? Specifically, how would they do it? From the south, the 3rd American Armored Division would race east 100 miles. Meanwhile, from the north, the 2nd American Armored Division would race east 100 miles. They'd race 100 miles behind German lines to link up at a place outside of Paderborn called Lippstadt. And once they had gotten there, they would create a huge circle around the Germans, and the Germans in the circle would be kaput. 370,000 Germans. The industrial heart of Germany would be knocked out of the war. So, on March 25th, 1945, a man named Colonel Richardson of the 3rd Armored Division was sent out of the Remagen bridgehead, lunging 100 miles behind German lines. His commander was General Rose of the 3rd Armored Division. General Rose told Colonel Richardson, "You have to cover 100 miles in one day." Colonel Richardson was like, "That's impossible." He said, "You have to do it." Now understand that a typical American armored division during World War II traveled at most 20 miles, 25 miles, but not 100. But Colonel Richardson was determined, and General Rose told him to go like hell. And so Colonel Richardson went lunging behind German lines 100 miles towards Paderborn. In the process, he cut the commander of the 15th German Army, General von Ziegen. He cut General von Ziegen off from his own troops. General von Ziegen was isolated, lost, cut off from his men, from his vehicles, from his tanks, on the wrong side of the Autobahn, which was full of American vehicles racing to Paderborn. So what was General von Ziegen going to do? He was an incredibly talented officer. He'd fought throughout the war. He'd been a great defensive officer. He'd always figured out how to succeed. So what he did was, he got into his jeeps. He got into his vehicles. He got all of his officers lined up behind him, and they drove onto the same road that the Americans were using. In front of them, a huge column of American vehicles racing towards Paderborn. Behind them, a huge column of American vehicles also racing towards Paderborn. And General von Ziegen and his German officers squeezed in the middle, hoping that the Americans would not notice them. And the Americans didn't. Remember, these divisions were called ragtag circuses. They were full of as many German vehicles captured as they were American vehicles, and they just thought that the general and his staff blended in. General von Ziegen sweated it out. And finally, they came to his exit, and he took his exit and returned to his army. Now, meanwhile, Colonel Richardson was lunging forward, lunging towards Paderborn, 100 miles behind German lines. He was almost making it. He couldn't believe it. He'd done it. He'd done the impossible. He'd launched himself 100 miles behind German lines. He was almost there. It was incredible. And then all of a sudden, General von Ziegen, who was reunited with his German forces, counterattacked behind Colonel Richardson. Now, Colonel Richardson was cut off by General von Ziegen and his counterattack, and he was trapped 100 miles behind German lines. What was he going to do? What was he going to do? He radioed to his general, General Rose of the 3rd Armored Division, and General Rose said, "I'm coming. I'm coming to your rescue." So I took over the theater. I thought I was lunging behind enemy lines. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never run a theater before. And the first show, I knew was going to be tough because it was a one-person show. And it was very funny. It was a great one-person show, but I wasn't quite sure that the audience was going to latch onto it. It was complicated. It was funny in a very specific kind of way, and I was pretty sure it wasn't going to make any money. I was truly depressed when I looked at the finances. Now, the previous artistic director had put together all these shows. I had nothing to do with it. He had selected them, he created the whole system, and then he left. So the season was his. And although I thought this show was really funny, when I looked at the finances, I was crestfallen. The performer had been paid much too much money. There was no way, with that salary, that the show could ever make the money back. It was definitely going to lose money. And what's even more upsetting was there was no equity of pay. The performer was paid 10 times what the director was paid. I just thought that was sad. Everybody worked so hard on a play. Why was the performer paid so much? And I was kind of angry at myself. Not at the performer, but just at the situation. And then the show didn't attract audiences. And I could tell the performer was depressed. And a part of me felt like, well, karma, right? But no. I did a new job. And that wasn't to be a competitive artist, it was to be a leader. So every night I go backstage and I tell the performer, it's great, the audience is going to be great tonight, you're going to have a great time on stage. The performer would say, there's nobody out there, there's so few people. And I'd say, it doesn't matter. They always have fun, you know that. Once you get out there, no matter how many of them there are, they're going to be great. Have fun with it, enjoy the run. And the performer did. We made the best of a difficult situation. And I didn't let my inside knowledge get the better of me. It was going to be a tough season, I could see that. Station 5, the death of General Rose. General Maurice Rose was one of the most talented generals in the American Army. He was one of the most talented tank commanders in Europe. He was a major general. He was the highest ranking Jewish soldier in the American Army. And now he was going to do the right thing. He was going to send himself, because he was a great leader, he was going to send himself to help out Colonel Richardson. He didn't have tanks, he didn't have half-tracks, he didn't have weapons of any kind other than pistols and rifles and jeeps. So he and his officers raced north to get to Paderborn, to break through General von Zagen and help Colonel Richardson outside Paderborn. Now, what everybody had forgotten, or at least not forgotten, but what everybody didn't appreciate was that at Paderborn there was a German tank school. This is where the Germans went to train to fight with their panzers, and everybody just thought, oh, they're cadets, what does that matter? They won't even have tanks. That wasn't the case. They did have tanks. Paderborn had many tanks. The biggest Tiger tanks you've ever seen. And it had eager cadets who wanted to get into the action before the war was over. And worst of all, it had aggressive, fanatical SS officers in charge. And here was General Rose and Colonel Richardson racing towards Paderborn and the German tank school. And sure enough, as they raced towards the tank school, the cadets and their tanks came out. General Rose was racing north to help Colonel Richardson, and all of a sudden he found himself surrounded by the SS tanks from the Paderborn Cadet Tank School. Everywhere he looked, tanks surrounding him, their guns pointing at him. He didn't know what to do. He looked to his right and left, and his officers were surrendering. And he realized that with rifles and pistols, that's all they could do. So, his officers were given a nod by the SS officers in the tanks. And so they all started to reach for their gun belts. That's how you surrender. You put your hands down, you reach for your gun belt, you take it off, and you throw your gun belt away. Well, General Rose could not get his gun belt off. He was struggling with his gun belt. He couldn't get it off. And the Germans, of course, thought that he was reaching for his pistol. So they opened fire on him with machine guns. General Rose was the highest ranking American casualty of the European Theater of Operations, a major general. When his troops found out what would happen to him, they were convinced that he'd been executed by the Nazis because he was Jewish. That's why they thought the Nazi panzer officers had machine guns. And the Americans then fought back fanatically. The 3rd Armored banged its way towards Paderborn because they were angry at the Nazis for executing their commanding general for being Jewish. But that wasn't the case. It was a mistake. The Germans really did believe he was reaching for his gun. They fought so hard that on April 2nd, 1945, they hammered their way through to link up with the 2nd Armored Division coming from the 9th Army from the north, and now the Ruhr was encircled, and the Germans were all trapped in a giant pocket. A huge circle that contained 370,000 men and the industrial heart of Germany. the Ruhr pocket, surrounded by the 1st American Army in the south and the 9th American Army in the north. Linked at Paderborn. Station 6, the canal. So now the Ruhr pocket had to be reduced. And the first thing that was going to happen was the 9th Army was going to attack from the north into the Ruhr pocket. Now what they had to do first was cross the Dortmund-Ems Canal, a system of canals that were almost impenetrable. It was like a river. It was like the Rhine River all over again. And the best account of these canal attacks are by the greatest American novelist of the 20th century, Richard Yates. Yes, he was there. He was 19 years old, and he was in the United States Army fighting in the canal. Those canals, and he's written some brilliant books. A Revolutionary Road, Easter Brain of his best is his book about the fighting in the canals of the Ruhr pocket, the Dortmund-Ems Canal. Yes, and the book is called A Special Providence. It's wonderful. He even wrote 2 stories about it, which are brilliant stories, The Canal and The BAR Man. And there he was, 19 years old, before he became a novelist. And he was given a ladder, and he was sent to cross the Dortmund-Ems Canal with his platoon. The canal was 30 feet deep, concrete. It had a concrete base, 35 feet wide. They came down one side of it. They slogged across the bottom of the canal under fire. There was complete confusion. They barely knew what was going on. On the other side, they opened up their ladders and they started to climb up the other side of the Dortmund-Ems Canal, but the ladders were only 24 feet high. They weren't high enough for the 30-foot concrete walls. They got to the top, and they had to be pulled up to the top. And on the top, they discovered a horrifying landscape. Incredible. A completely destroyed city. The Ruhr was such that the cities were so big that they stretched and connected to one another, and they were completely destroyed. Dortmund, Essen, Cologne, Dusseldorf, Duisburg, all of them destroyed. How? By the United States and British Strategic Air Commands. For 4 years, they've been bombing the Ruhr, trying to knock the Germans' industrial heart out of the war. It was a devastating bombing campaign. And all that was left was rubble. Destroyed buildings, rebar, rubble everywhere, concrete. And the Germans turned it into fortresses and fought back maniacally. It was defended by the fanatical divisions, the German 2nd Parachute Division and the German 116th Panzer Division. The Americans couldn't do anything. They fought back, but they could not defeat them, so they called in their tactical air force. They called in the tactical air force to bomb the Germans out of their fortresses, to get them out with machine guns, and the planes came in low and fast. The next show in the season was my own play. It was about World War II. It was about gays in the military during the Second World War. And it was a big success. I was very proud of it. It was a wonderful cast. And I was very happy that it was successful. But I made a big mistake. The leading actress and I, for some reason, weren't getting along. I didn't understand it, but, you know, it takes two to tango, so I'm sure it was half my fault. And I never dealt with it. Well, I did deal with it. I stopped speaking to her. For 6 weeks, I wouldn't speak to her. I just got fed up with the arguments. And I shut down. I didn't try to work it out. I just stopped speaking. It occurred to me that I wasn't behaving like a leader. I was behaving like a child. I need to get better at that. Station 7, the Sauerland. So the 9th Army has attacked the north. Now the 1st Army is going to attack from the south into the Ruhr pocket. They're going to attack into the Sauerland. Now where does that name come from? Well, it's just like English. It's an area of Germany that is sour. The soil is bad. It's a part of Germany that just stinks. Bad soil, smelly country. The Sauerland, the sourest part of Germany. And the 1st Army was launched into the Sauerland. Now, taking the helm on this assault was the 18th Airborne Corps, led by the famous General Matthew Ridgway. And the German defense was dogged. Oh God, it smelled terrible. And the Germans were shooting at them. It was awful. So General Ridgway sent in the 13th Armored Division. Were not good. They weren't well used either. They had to travel 200 miles to get to the battlefield non-stop. They didn't even rest. And when they got there, they were thrown into the battle without refitting, without regrouping, without resting. They just went thrown into battle. Before the battle was even over, the 13th Armored Division of the United States Army was reduced to 50% combat effectiveness. Station 8. Hold the Rhine, or frustration. So I've talked about the 9th Army attacking into the pocket from the north and the 1st Army attacking from the south. But what about the 15th Army that was supposed to hold the Rhine front? Remember that? They were afraid that the Germans were going to attack across the Rhine and get behind the Americans. But the Germans weren't doing anything. They were static. They were moving. And the men in the 15th Army were getting frustrated because they wanted a piece of the action. Now there were 2 motivations. There were divisions like the 82nd Airborne, the All-Americans. Now, these guys were great. They had fought at D-Day, Italy, Sicily. They had fought at the Market Garden operation. They fought the Battle of the Bulge. They had fought everywhere. They'd always been star fighters. And here they were sitting, guarding this river. They were frustrated. There are also new divisions, like the 94th Infantry Division. It had never been in combat. They wanted a piece of the action before the war was over. So, frustration set in, and these 2 divisions decided to take matters into their own hands. The 82nd Airborne Division was going to launch its forces across the Rhine River. They got into their landing craft, and they put the landing craft into the Rhine, and then they headed across the Rhine River. When they got on the German side, the Germans started firing on them. The men of the 82nd Airborne Division got back on their landing craft and went back across the Rhine. They retreated. They hadn't thought the Germans were going to be there. Hubris. They'd been arrogant, and they'd had to retreat. It was the last fight of the 82nd Airborne, and it was a humiliating one. Now, the 94th Division had never been in a fight before. They just wanted a piece of the action. They were eager kids, right? They didn't want the war to end. They didn't get a piece of it. But they were much more romantic, much more ambitious. They didn't want to cross just in, landing craft like the 82nd. They wanted to sneak across at night, like commandos. That's what they do. They'd cross as commandos, and they'd seize a German town. So the 94th Infantry Division loaded onto their landing craft. They crossed the Rhine, and the Germans didn't do anything. They didn't fight them. There were no Germans to be seen. So they raced for a town, and they raced for a house, and they broke into the house. And they captured a house, and they were going to capture the whole town. They knew it. But the Germans weren't asleep. They lured the 94th Infantry Division into a trap. And as soon as they were set up in this house, the Germans counterattacked. And there they were, in that house. And the Germans surrounded them. And so they sent word to them, "You must surrender, Amerikanskis. You must surrender." And the Americans were terrified. They didn't want to surrender. They'd be humiliated, but you must. You must. The war is almost over. It'll be over soon. The Americans are going to win. You'll be liberated in a few days. But you must surrender now, or we will flatten the house. And the young soldiers in the 94th were terrified. They didn't know what to do. And the Germans gave them till 3. One, you must surrender. We'll take care of you. You'll be liberated in a few days. 2, it'll be fine. Just come out or we will flatten you. 3, and the Americans came out. They surrendered. Near the end of the war, when the Germans were losing, the 94th suffered a humiliating defeat. Both the 94th and the 82nd hadn't taken the Germans seriously. And the Germans had proved them fools. Even in defeat, the Germans could fight ferociously. That's what the Ruhr Pocket was proving. The next show was, it was complicated. It was a very complicated show. And it was, how should we put it? It was experimental. It was confusing to the audience. They didn't like it. Now, I thought it was great. I mean, the acting was incredible. The directing was incredible. The design, the costumes, the sets, it was all really impressive. And a lot of the dialogue was great, but it really didn't make sense. It really wasn't meant to, but it wasn't audience friendly. And the director and the playwright weren't open to feedback. They didn't want to talk about it. They just wanted to put on the show. And it was fine. I thought, okay, just be a cheerleader. Show your support. You know how to do it. Don't shut down. Don't stop talking to people. Be a good leader. A tough thing, though, was that the playwright wanted a place to work. And I said, there's no more offices, but you can come into my office. I'll set up a desk and you can work in my office. And the playwright did, came into my office and for 6 weeks worked in my office. The problem was that the playwright didn't really work. The playwright just wanted to hang out and talk, which was okay. All right. I mean, I had work to do, but all right, I could talk for a little bit. But the playwright really didn't want to talk. The playwright just wanted to talk about themselves. And every time I sort of cut in and told a fun story, they would listen for a while, bored, and then just go back to talking about themselves. It was a very tough 6 weeks. But we got through it. The show ended. I thought everybody felt fine about the show, except that the playwright wrote me an email. And in the email, the playwright complained about everybody who worked at the theater except me. I'd like to say I was flattered, but I knew why the playwright had such a tough time. Probably people just got tired of hearing the same old stories. It was frustrating. It was a tough season. Every play, for some reason, was a struggle. But I had to keep at it. Keep pushing forward. Station 9, Dortmund, south and north. The United States Army, the First Army, was attacking Dortmund from the south. The United States Ninth Army was attacking the city of Dortmund from the north. The resistance was incredible. The Germans were fighting back constantly. They would not let up. They would not let up. The planes came in and attacked. But still the Germans resisted. Why? How? Why were the Germans so fanatical? I think it was because of the Gestapo. The Gestapo has started to arrest any German, soldier or civilian, who wanted to surrender, who showed any signs of defeatism. They took them outside the towns and hung them from telephone poles. The Gestapo put signs on them. The sign said traitor, coward. They were examples
They're meant to show the Germans what would happen to them if they surrendered, if they were in any way defeatist. So what could the Germans do now? They couldn't surrender. The Gestapo would kill them. There was no food. The Americans were attacking constantly. So the civilians took to the cellars. Station 11, the cellar. The Germans were in their cellars now. The bombs, the tanks, the explosions overhead were unrelenting. Now every German household has a piano in it, right? The home of Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, Bruckner, Wagner. This was the country of music, so every German home had a piano in it, and now the pianos were playing the music of war. As the explosions rained in, the pianos played their own special music. And then there was silence. What had happened? The civilians began to emerge. They were hungry. They couldn't stay in the cellars forever. And there was silence up above. There was no more fighting. What had happened? The Gestapo were gone. They realized what had happened. The German army was also out of food. It was also out of ammunition. It was out of supplies. And now the German army itself was surrendering. Station 12, the link-up. On April 14th, 1945, the United States First Army, which had been racing north, the United States Ninth Army, which had been racing south, now linked up and cut the pocket in half. The German pocket was torn right down the middle. And General von Ziegen, who'd been there from the beginning, Remagen Bridge, attacking General Rose and Colonel Richardson. General von Ziegen could see that there was nothing left to fight for. His troops were starving. They had no gasoline, they had no tanks left, they had no planes, they had no supplies, no ammunition. And General von Ziegen decided to surrender the 15th Army. His superior officer was a man named Walter Model. Station 14, Model's Dilemma. Model was a Feldmarschall, a field marshal in the German army. He was one of Hitler's favorites because he was unrelenting. He would never give up. He would never surrender. He fought to the death. Not his death, but the deaths of his men. And now, his army group, which comprised the 15th Army and the 5th Panzer Army and elements of the 1st German Parachute Army, was decimated. His men were surrendering in droves. His officers kept saying to him, "You've got to surrender, you've got to surrender. Feldmarschall Model, you must surrender." But he said, "No, I cannot. I cannot surrender." He made such demands on his men through the whole war. He'd been fighting for 6 years, demanding that men die for him, and now he was going to surrender. He felt he would be humiliated. Also, he would let down Hitler. Hitler didn't expect his generals to surrender. He expected his generals and his men to fight to the death. And that is what Model had been doing, just not his death. He couldn't surrender. His dignity wouldn't let him. And also, I think, he was afraid. You see, he fought on the Russian front, and he knew that if he surrendered, he personally would be captured by the Americans and handed over to the Russians. And then the Russians would try him and hang him for war crimes because he had been brutal to the Russian prisoners of war. They had his name on a death list. There was a price on Model's head, so he couldn't surrender. But his officers convinced him that it was inhumane to keep on fighting. he would have to disobey Hitler's orders and somehow dissolve the army without actually surrendering. So he told his men to stop fighting. He told them to go home. He didn't actually surrender. He just dissolved the army. And then he went out into the woods, alone, where no one could see him. And he shot himself in the head. There's one more show left in the season. It was by far the toughest show of that season. My God, it was difficult. It was actually about the military. It was about the Marine Corps. There was a time when Marine Corps men were making porno videos, and this was a play about it. It was actually a pretty interesting subject, but the director was almost determined not to rehearse enough. He wasn't holding up rehearsals. And when the show went into previews, he came to me and he said, "You can't open the show. You can't have previews. The show isn't ready." I said, "We have to do it. We've sold tickets." He said, "No, you can't." I said, "You've got to do it. You've got to have performances." He said, "No, I refuse. I won't let the actors perform." So he's holding the show hostage. I calmed down. I said, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" He said, "You have to call everybody and tell them not to come." I said, "That's a lot of people." And he said, "You have to call them." So we called everybody on the guest list, all the people who bought tickets, all the press, all the comps, all of them, and told them that they couldn't come. The show wasn't ready. At the first preview, we got a hold of everybody. It was a miracle. Nobody showed up except two of my favorite subscribers. Two women from San Jose, a married couple, and they were both San Jose police officers. And they were pissed. Especially one of them, who told me, "You didn't leave me a message." I didn't get a message. I said, "Oh yeah, I did. I mean, I left a message with a couple different numbers. I'm sure I did, telling you shouldn't come. I called as early as I can, maybe." "You didn't leave me a message." Fortunately, her wife cut in and said to her, "Oh, you never listen to your messages anyway. Come on." And she sort of smiled. "Well, that's true." And she laughed. I thought, oh my God. I thought I was in trouble. They were cops, these two, from San Jose. I was going to end up in a San Jose prison. Can you imagine? It sounds horrifying and boring. Can you imagine what the food is like in the San Jose jail? And then the director came out, and he totally was charming with them. He was like, "Oh my God, look at you guys. Yeah, I saw your name in the guest list, Sergeant. Yeah, but I knew you weren't in the military. I knew that you were a cop. Look at you. Yeah, come back. You'll love the show. You'll love the show." It was typical of the show. It took forever to open it. And when it did open, there were all sorts of problems. Problems with the actors, problems with recasting the show. Every week there was some issue. The actors were getting it wrong. Somebody quit. And then one night there was nobody to go on stage in one of the roles. And everybody, it was an ensemble piece, so everybody had a big role. And I said, "I will go on the role. I think I can do it." I actually had to perform without a shirt on in one scene. It was like ridiculous. But I thought, you know what? This is your responsibility. This is leadership. Get your ass on stage. And somehow we made it through the season. And that final director said thank you. He never thanked anybody at the theater. I hadn't even chosen his show. But somehow we made it work. And we made it through the season. And we didn't make any money. But we didn't get any pull. Station 14, the prisoners. So now, the Ruhr pocket had surrendered. The war was coming to an end. 370,000 German soldiers went into captivity. It was incredible. This is the biggest haul of German prisoners, bigger than Tripoli, bigger than Stalingrad, the biggest haul of the war. Incredible. But what were the Americans going to do with all these prisoners? So, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the American forces, the British forces, the French forces, all Allied forces fighting in the West, decided that they would build prison camps for them. One of the prison camps was called Camp Remagen, but they weren't really prison camps. They were just barbed wire fences around open ground. There were no shelters. There were no hospitals. There was very little food. It was crazy. But Eisenhower decided that he wasn't going to call them POWs. He was going to call them disarmed enemy forces. DEF, not POWs. Why? Because if he called them POWs, prisoners of war, he would have to adhere to the Geneva Convention, and he didn't want to do this. So he crammed them into these big open-air prison camps. No shelter, nothing. The Germans had no place to be, in the sun, in the rain, in the wind, so they dug caves in the dirt and crawled into the caves for shelter and tried to sweat out the horrific weather conditions. The Red Cross wasn't allowed to come see them. The Red Cross brought gifts. It brought food, but they weren't allowed to come see them. They weren't allowed because they weren't actually prisoners of war, right? The Red Cross could only come and see prisoners of war, but that's not what they were. They were disarmed enemy forces, so the Red Cross wasn't allowed to visit. Also, the Red Cross would have seen the horrible conditions. Well, eventually the Red Cross managed to bully their way into the prison camps in August of 1945. The war had ended in May. There were still hundreds of thousands of Germans in these prison camps, and the Red Cross was appalled. Thousands of Germans were dying of exposure, of disease, cowering in these prison camps. The Red Cross said something needs to be done about this. If you're not going to let these people go, you've got to take care of them. Now, I'm not saying that the conditions in the American prison camps for the Germans were anything like the conditions in the German concentration camps. It wasn't like that. I mean, these weren't extermination camps. Germans were not being exterminated. They weren't like death camps at all. But they were left exposed. And it was an opportunity to show the Americans, for the Americans to show the Germans what civilization actually was like. And in fact, it resembled the concentration camps in all the people who died of disease, of exposure, of starvation, thousands. To this day, it's argued how many German soldiers actually died in those prison camps. Nobody knows. Some have said 6,000. Others have said up to 100,000. One figure was 1 million. I don't think that's true. But nobody knows. An opportunity lost to prove to the Germans that in war, a country can be civilized. Eisenhower just took an opportunity for revenge. Additionally, the Germans at the Nuremberg trials were accused of using slave labor, which was also against the Geneva Convention. Well, it happened here as well. The French wanted people to come to France, slaves, and rebuild France after the war. So they asked for 175,000 German soldiers, and they were given 175,000 German soldiers, and those soldiers became slaves, rebuilding France. The Ruhr Pocket was the last great conflict of the Second World War. In the West. In the East, the Russians hammered on towards Berlin, and they got into Berlin. Hitler committed suicide, and the war ended in May 1945. This book, this war, has certainly taken me out of myself. And it showed me a lot about the difficulties of creating anything, of fighting a battle, of putting on plays. And I don't imagine that I'm a General Eisenhower or General Rose. But all these books seem to suggest something about leadership and the confusion of battle and the relentless quandaries that face leaders. How to fight a war with civility. How to persist without being foolish. How to show humanity at moments when all you feel are rage. I'm not sure what a battle like the battle for the Ruhr Pocket has to say militarily. Nukes have taken care of most of that. And I'm a pacifist. I don't really believe in battles, but I love the stories. My goodness. I can't imagine myself in a war, but I can imagine myself in a movie recreating something like this. Oh my God, wouldn't that be fun? There is another great movie about the Battle for the Ruhr Pocket, and that is Fury, which is a movie about tanks, and that's the Ruhr Pocket. So there's Richard Yates novels, especially A Special Providence. There's a Richard Yates movie, yeah? The Bridget Ray Morgan.
and a tank movie, Fury. All about this battle that nobody ever really talks about. The battle for the Ruhr pocket. Well, it took me out of myself, and I was so happy because the play in New York, actually the star of it, because I made a friend and it had been encouraging and always been positive, was the performer who was in the first play, the one-person show. Yeah, they lived in New York now, right? And, you know, we struck up a friendship, and they were in my show in New York, and the show was great. I had a great time doing it. It did not end up on Broadway. It was not made into a movie. It was not an MTV video. But I managed to get through it all. I had my escape clause. And I do love Betty Davis, and I do love MGM musicals, and I do love the Castro. But I think of the Castro as a much bigger place. Yes, it extends all the way down to 16th and Mission. And I'm still at that theater company. And it crawls up the hill here to this wonderful gallery, Spark Arts, where we've been producing this season during COVID-19. And to the Holy Redeemer Church, and to Molly Stone's. Those are all gay places. A gay grocery store, a gay art gallery, and a gay Catholic church. How unique is that? I really do believe in gay neighborhoods. Has the Ruhr come back? Yes. It's now a tourist attraction. And people don't think the sour land is all that sour. They love to travel there. So, tourism always saves the day, right? And McDonald's. They say that there'll never be a war between two countries that have McDonald's. Yeah? Yeah, it's like international companies. That's what saves the world. But there was one between Russia and Ukraine. Yeah, so that's even been broken. But we got to work on that. I think we have to have like multiple, like Burger King and Jack in the Box. I think if there's like multiple franchises, there won't be a war. Thank you for joining me for the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket. It's been my pleasure performing for you. My name is John Fisher. I'm at Spark Arts Gallery. This is Jen Feinberg's work. I've never met Jen, but I walked in here and I was like, wow, look at this stuff. It's wonderful. It's so beautifully done. It's everywhere. Big format, small format. I encourage you to get down here, wear your mask, social distance, get your shots, whatever. It'll be here all summer. And check it out. It's wonderful. The Holy Redeemer Church, great. If you go there, it's amazing. Just drive by and look at it. There's all these rainbow flags everywhere. It's magical. And, you know, you all know Molly Stone's. I don't need to do a plug for Molly Stone's, right? You know, okay. If you've enjoyed this project and the other essential service projects, my solo performances on Thursday night, we'd certainly appreciate your support. We've had a tough time, like a lot of theater companies, during COVID-19, but we've stayed alive, nevertheless, and it's because so many people have lent us so much support. You can go on our website, therhino.org, and make a donation through PayPal, or you can send me a check, John Fisher, Theater Rhinoceros, at my COVID-19 address, 91 Central Avenue, Suite number 102, San Francisco, California, 94117. We'll be back in May with a reading of a new play. That's Joe Talley's Enterprise. Yay, Joe! Yay! Joe keeps it going with the readings, with everything. He's the man behind the curtain, and sometimes in front of it. We love our Joe. And then we have our evening with Mark Nadler, Gay as They Say, a great piece that he's creating just for us. That's coming May 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And then the final show of our season, Pillow Talk, which is a brand new play set in a car in West Oakland during the 90s. It's a great, great play. I'm sure you'll love it. And these things will all be broadcast. You can make a donation to see any of them, or you can buy a ticket and support our theater, whichever way. But more than anything, thank you so much for being here. You've been a terrific audience all through COVID-19. You continue to be a terrific audience. We couldn't do it without you. And we really, really appreciate the support that you lend to Theater Rhinoceros, which is now right here in the Castro, the real Castro. Good night.